Okay, so picture this. A grieving widow helps her three little boys deal with their dad's sudden death by writing a children's book about it. I mean, that sounds pretty touching, right? But what if I told you that same widow was actually the one who killed him? Yeah, today we're going to dive deep into the absolutely wild case of Kouri Richins.
And it all kicked off with those words right there. Those chilling words Kouri said to a 911 dispatcher. Now, on the surface, a wife finding her husband like that, it's a horrible tragedy. But as investigators started digging, they realized pretty quickly that the details of that night, well, they just weren't adding up at all.
All right, let's set the scene. We're going back to that night, March 3rd, 2022. And according to Kouri, the whole thing started off as a celebration.
So here's the story Kouri gave the police. She said she and her husband, Eric, were celebrating a huge real estate deal she just closed. We're talking a massive $2.9 million property. To celebrate, they each had a Moscow Mule. But then, one of their sons apparently had a nightmare, so Kouri went to sleep in his room to comfort him. The thing is, she didn't come back to her own bed until around 3 in the morning. That's a full 6 hours later. And that's when she says she found Eric, cold to the touch and not breathing.
And almost right away, Kouri and her mom started throwing out ideas to the first responders. Oh, maybe it was an allergic reaction, or could it have been an aneurysm? They were trying to build this narrative of a natural, tragic accident, but the reality, it was a completely different story. Eric had absolutely no history of severe allergies, and there were zero signs of an aneurysm. So while Kouri kept saying he wasn't feeling good, the truth was way, way darker.
And right here, this is the moment Kouri's whole story just starts to fall apart. Because when those autopsy results came back, they painted a picture that had nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with allergies or an aneurysm.
The official cause of death? Drug intoxication. And not just any drug, we're talking illicit fentanyl. And the amount they found in his system, get this, it was 5 times the lethal dose. 5 times. This wasn't some tragic accident. This was, without a doubt, a poisoning. Now, for Eric's family and friends, this horrible news wasn't actually a complete shock, which is just heartbreaking. Turns out, they had suspected Kouri before. I mean, look at this timeline. It shows a really disturbing pattern. Back in 2019, they were in Greece, and Eric got super violently ill right after Kouri gave him a drink. He even told his sister he thought she'd spiked it. Then, fast forward to just weeks before he died, Valentine's Day of all days. Kouri gives him a sandwich, and suddenly he breaks out in hives and passes out. He even texted a friend later, and I quote, "I think she might have poisoned me." So, okay, the cause of death is confirmed, and there's this whole history of suspicion. Now investigators just needed to connect the dots, and they found all the proof they needed by following her digital trail.
You're not going to believe this. Eric's family actually hired a private investigator who got a hold of Kouri's phone records. And what they found, it's basically a step-by-step guide on how to commit murder and get away with it. Her Google search history had things like, what is a lethal dose of fentanyl? Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? And my personal favorite, luxury prisons for the rich in America. I mean, come on.
So the big question was, where did she get the fentanyl? Well, detectives tracked it down, and the connection came from a really unexpected place. Kouri's cleaner, a woman named Carmen. Apparently, Kouri asked her for the Michael Jackson stuff, a clear reference to powerful prescription drugs. So Carmen contacts her dealer, gets the pills, and then sells between 15 and 30 fentanyl pills to Kouri. And this happened just 1 week before Eric died.
So why? Why would she do all this? Well, it all comes down to one thing: money. It was a purely financial motive. See, Kouri was telling all her friends she owned $11 million in real estate, making herself out to be this big success. But the reality? She was drowning. We're talking $7.5 million of debt. And after Eric died, she collected $1.3 million from life insurance, policies, by the way, that she had forged his signature on.
And all of this, as you can imagine, leads straight to a courtroom. This is where the world would really get to see the unbelievable contrast between the grieving author Kouri pretended to be and the calculating killer she really was. Okay, get this. A year after Eric's death, a year after she killed him, Kouri publishes a children's book on grief. It was called Are You With Me? She even went on local TV to promote it. She sat there presenting herself as this caring, dedicated mom who was just trying to help her boys cope with their loss. The audacity is just off the charts. But while she was putting on that show for the public,
A very different Corey was showing up behind bars. Deputies found this letter hidden in her jail cell, and it was titled, "Walk the Dog." I know, weird, right? But in it, she's giving her brother explicit instructions to lie under oath. She wanted him to make up a whole story about Eric buying drugs in Mexico. It was a blatant, undeniable attempt at witness tampering.
So, at the trial, you had two completely different stories being told. The prosecution would bring up the 911 calls saying, look, she waited 6 whole minutes to start CPR. It was an act. But the defense would fire back, no, she was just a panicked wife in the worst moment of her life. You can't judge her grief. The prosecution presented her cleaner, Carmen, as the direct link to the murder weapon. The defense? They claimed Carmen was just trying to get a plea deal to save her own skin. And then the state dropped another bombshell, a 2-year affair Corey was having, arguing it was a romantic motive to get Eric out of the picture for a fresh start.
And then came the moment that I think stunned everyone in the courtroom. After the prosecution laid out this mountain of evidence, the defense just rested its case. That's it. They didn't call a single witness to the stand, and Corey Richins herself, she chose not to testify in her own defense.
So, what happened? What was the verdict? And what's the final chilling twist in this already insane story?
Well, the jury didn't need much time at all. After just 3 hours, they came back. The verdict? Guilty. Guilty on all charges. That includes aggravated murder, which is basically murder with extra circumstances that make it even more heinous, like doing it for money, and also guilty of attempted aggravated murder for that Valentine's Day poisoning attempt. They got her on everything.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. Because as investigators kept digging, they stumbled onto something else. Something that raises a really disturbing question about Corey's family history.
So a search warrant was recently unsealed, and it revealed something absolutely chilling about Curry's own mother, Lisa Darden. It turns out that back in 2006, her romantic partner also died unexpectedly from an overdose of oxycodone. And guess who had been named the beneficiary of his estate right before he died? You guessed it, Lisa Darden. It's so suspicious that the lead detective on Eric's case actually wrote in his notes, it is possible she was involved in planning and orchestrating Eric's death. So it leaves you with this final, really dark question. Is something as evil as murder a learned behavior? Can it be passed down, like some kind of twisted family inheritance?